Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. I'm Audley Stevenson, and this is the Audacious Living Podcast, hands down the most audacious podcast on the web. Welcome. It's always a pleasure to be here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping you live your best audacious life ever. You can connect with us through our social media channels. We're on Twitter and Instagram under the handle The Audacious Pod. Facebook is the Audacious Living Podcast, and on YouTube as well. You can look us up there and subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button, and each time new content becomes available, you'll immediately be on the list and you'll be in the know. Certainly like, follow, subscribe, share, tell a friend. That'd be appreciated. It is absolutely wonderful to always be here and again to spread the good word. So thank you for doing that. We're going to be talking about leveling up on this edition of the podcast, and I'm so happy and excited to be welcoming leadership development speaker, author, trainer, great person all around. I'm talking about Alyson Van Hooser. She'll be on the podcast to help us dissect what it truly means to level up. Now, there are varying definitions of what leveling up is. Some will say it's attributed to your looks, for example, or outside features. Others might make a connection to the material things we own, like a house or a car. That might be viewed as leveling up. And then to some, it's about the internal work that you do to get better. I guess the simplest way to define leveling up, it's really about becoming the best version of yourself. It's recognizing that where you are isn't where you're destined to remain. It's about self-development. It's about being better than what you are, regardless of what your past circumstances are or your situations. If you're not making the conscious choice to grow or do the self-work to get yourself to a higher place, you're not leveling up. Alyson totally understands this. Like I said, she does an awesome job in sharing some really key aspects of what leveling up is. A big component of that is around the ownership. We've got to own the fact that leveling up is our own responsibility, and the importance of that is, again, it's key. We've got to be accountable to ourselves. We've got to take control of the direction of where we want to go. She'll touch on all that. And actually, she's got a book, Level Up, Elevate Your Game, and Crush Your Goals. It's a great read, and it really gives a great picture and overall snapshot of what leveling up is. It's done and written in such a fun and playful manner, which really helps because it makes the content that much easier to absorb. So I really think you're going to enjoy not only Alyson's book, but you're also going to enjoy hearing from her. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop talking now and give you an opportunity to hear from Alyson Van Hooser. Enjoy. Alyson Van Hooser is a speaker, author, and leadership coach who's passionate about developing the future leaders of tomorrow. Her book, Level Up, Elevate Your Game, and Crush Your Goals, was written to help readers understand that the process of leveling up involves taking the necessary action to improve your current situation for the better. The truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, you are the common denominator in your success. Alyson Van Hooser is up next on the Audacious Living Podcast. So Alyson, I really appreciate you taking the time here. The podcast is if you haven't picked up by now, it's really centered around living this audacious life, being bold, demonstrating courage in our actions. And can we just jump into this? I don't want to call it. If you just want to call a conversation, let's just go, because the first thing I wanted to say is I think you did a tremendous job with your book, Level Up. And what I really appreciated from your book is the fact that you very much took your experiences, your everything that you've experienced, your life lessons, all those things, and applied them and used them. And then the other piece that you've done is shared them, right? And that for me is what really gets me excited, that you go through an experience, you go through a lesson, but it doesn't stay with you, right? And the true value is going, okay, this is what I got from, let me give it to someone else and see if they can help them along the way. And that's what I saw, I felt, I experienced going through your book. And so I had to say that because it was a lot of fun. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. I think that we all have the power to share our experiences and impact other people. So I'm just so honored and so thankful. This is what I get to do for a living. So yeah, thank you for reading the book. Thank you for those kind of comments.
Yeah, well, again, it was, I think the whole idea of leveling up and, elevating our game is something what's within all our grasp, right? It's something that we all can do. I think oftentimes there's a misconception or a thought, well, this is restricted for those types of people, or I'm an introvert. I like to say reserved. No, you still we still can elevate our game, right? And level up and be the person who we're meant to be. So I wonder if you can start off by kind of talking about what that process was like for you, like that sort of realization that, like, these things that I've experienced, I've gone through, they do matter, they are significant, and it's worth capturing. Well, what did that look like for you, Alyson?
Yeah, so for me, it wasn't this lightning strike moment where the earth opened up and it was, Alyson, this is what you're supposed to do. It was more of a looking back and filling in the pieces and see what opportunities were being presented to me and just keep moving where the door kept opening. And so for me, for those people who will check this out and then read the book, what you'll read in Level Up is stories about me coming up in poverty and living with my dad, who struggled with addiction, and my mom, who she left whenever I was just a little kid. And what I experienced all through my life was that I couldn't, as a kid, control all these things that were going on around me, but I could control what I did. And I could see people in our small community. There's a lot of poverty, as there is in most other communities. And I could look around and I could see people that were getting out of it and those that were staying in it. And I just started becoming a people watcher. Like, if there was an award for winning or an award for the best people watcher, like Michael Phelps right here, I would get it. But I watch people, and it taught me that, there are people who take ownership of, I can achieve whatever it is that's on my heart. And then there are people who just keep saying, life keeps happening to me. And I didn't want that for myself anymore. And I finally just realized it was within my control to change things. And as life went on and doors began to open, I met my husband in high school and had met his father, of course, through that relationship. And now he and I work to develop leaders across the country.
Awesome.
Yes.
I love the word ownership, because that's a big one, Alyson, where we have to, and it's a conscious choice that we've got to do. And we can talk about all the things that are happening to us, happening around us, happening to us. But at the end of the day, we still have to take ownership, as you eloquently spoke of many times in your book.
Thank you. I always say this to myself: what's the next right move? Like, what can I do next? And I think that's ownership on a practical level. Like, whether it's in the morning when the kids are stressing everybody out before work or something, it's what can I do next to make things what I want them to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly what we have to. Again, it's that conscious choice that has to be made, and sometimes it's an easier choice to make. And other times it's not as easy. It's just a bit more of a struggle, and we know what it is, but we don't necessarily jump to it right away, right?
You're exactly right. And if you remember in the book, in the first part, I talk about a process that I use that helps me remember or be able to get over the hard stuff so I can stay on track, that lay down the law process. And we can talk about that, but I think you're exactly right that it's not always easy. But when you just start breaking life down into choices, those bold, audacious choices, because that's all that it is at the end of the day, is a choice to show up. That's when you can have an audacious life, right?
I love it. You're absolutely right. You had a couple plugs there for the word audacious. I should have an audacious counter how many times, but no, but it was very much, so laying down the law, exactly. And I was, and sort of thoughts around my mind around that was really much about finding our purpose. Like, why are we here? Or what is our intention? What is it what we're trying to get to? And are the steps and actions that we're taking, are they putting us in a direction where we want to go? Because if they're not, then we got to question if we're doing the right thing in terms of what we want to do, right?
Absolutely. I'm a very practical person. I'm not very, can I use the word woo woo? Like I need stuff to be real and be tangible. And those three questions, who am I? What do I want? How am I going to get it? Are the most practical, real, down to earth way I could figure out to keep everything on track. But I'll ask you, when we start this conversation about goal setting and being audacious and staying on track to achieve your goals, I've recently been thinking and writing and maybe just burdened by the fact that we have this inspirational culture that is pushing people to live your purpose so hard that people get lost in achievement versus purpose. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, and what's really interesting, I think added to that is when so social media as an example, because everyone throws it out there and it further complicates or muddies the water, so to speak, in terms of the difference between the two. And then you get caught up into, oh, well, so-and-so is also doing this, and maybe that's where I need to be. And I think it really comes back to who you are and what feels natural and I was gonna say natural to who you are as an individual. Because if it's not, if you're finding that you're doing something that makes you feel uncomfortable, that maybe doing things that you're not used to, then you really have to look at that and go, okay, wait, slow it down here. Is this the right direction we're going to? Achievements are great. I love achievements because I oftentimes use them as a source of energy and strength, right? And so when you run into a period of adversity, the first you go, okay, all right, I've seen this before, right? And that's why there's such significance in trying new things, because right, if you try new things, you run into them, you go, okay, I've seen this before, and this is what the outcome, whether it was successful or unsuccessful, you still can learn from that. So, achievements are great, right? Achievements are absolutely great. They're not necessarily the same as purpose, but that's kind of, I still think they serve a purpose if you follow my drift.
I totally agree with that. That's what gives you the energy to keep going when things get hard. I totally agree with that.
What was your thoughts? I'm curious now.
So my thoughts are, I think about, I'm not sure who all listens to your podcast, but I can speak for me now as a speaker and author, and you could talk about things in the basketball league. So for me, and anyone who does business online, there becomes these goals. Maybe someone's goal is a blue check mark. Do you know what I mean? That someone giving you a stamp, verified, this person is legit. There are these goals that we have that we try to get to, and we spend every day making sure that we're posting at the right time, talking to the right people, all of these things, and miss the fact that we are interacting with people in our everyday lives, whether it's those people in order to achieve the goals or whether it's our community, the people that we live life with, the people that we're working with, that we need to make sure that we're making a difference in their lives too, because we're all put in a particular place for a particular reason. And I think that while achievements are totally important and they're benchmarkers for careers, and you need those are your goals. Don't get lost while you're running and everything that you're passing by. Is my ultimate thought.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that. Like it's like that whole stop and smelling the roses, right? I think
yes.
So much value in that. And sometimes when you're so focused on that end goal, like I got to get there, like you miss the important stuff. And this is actually going to feed into what I was going to ask you about, the process of leveling up, because it is a process. It's not a one-time thing that you do. And so when you're tying into what we just talked about in that process of leveling up, you need to be paying attention to the markers and the check marks as you go along, because those are things that you can take and feed into you. And so that's what I wanted to talk about next, the process of leveling up. What's that look like?
Yeah, so let's dig in. That first question of leveling up, you mentioned it, staying true to who you are, defining this is who I am. I had to do that sort of growing up, and I didn't really do it. I didn't do it pen to paper until I was well into adulthood. I was married and into my career before I put pen to paper. Before that, it was just sort of in my mind of, okay, this is what I've seen, and this is what's good, what's bad, and who I want to be. So I found that the more people that I interact with, fewer and fewer people actually take time to sit down and do this analysis to say, what do I stand for? At the end of the day, who am I? Regardless of what everyone else thinks, regardless of what everyone else wants for me, who am I? And so that gives you clarity. And then the next one, what do you want? That's the second question, 3 practical questions. Who am I? What do I want? Defining that goal. I'll tell you a story really quickly, because I think sometimes if you're listening to this on audio, you can't tell, but I can see Audley. Audley seems like an incredible man. That smile just lights up a room. So I'm just going to get real with you all really quick.
Yes.
Talked about lay down the law is a process. It's something you do over and over and over, multiple times every day as opportunities come to me to do different things. Does this line up with who I am and the goals that I want to achieve? During the pandemic, I am someone who has pursued professional goals hardcore since I got out of college. And I've been pretty successful at what I've wanted to do. I've achieved my goals one after the other. Praise the Lord, not by my doing, but by his will and my hard work put with it.
Yep.
So for me, when the pandemic started, I have 4 children. And well, when it started, I had 3 children. And during the pandemic, I added a 4th. And so when we talk about this lay down the law, I had been a person who had professional goals at the top, thinking that that would fulfill my professional success, would fuel my ability to be able to provide opportunities for my children. That's where it fit into my goals. But I found myself during the pandemic with 3 kids at home, 1 on the way, 2 that are school age that I had to teach. And my career needed me to pivot. And ultimately, I had to lay down the law and pick, because one of these is more important than the other to me.
Yep.
Now, put someone else in my shoes. They may have picked something else, and I can't judge what someone else's goals should be. But for me, it was my kids. And so I had to lay down the law and say, okay, for right now, this has to take a back seat, and kids have to be put up there. And now we're sort of coming out of the pandemic. I get to shift again. My kids are all at the water park now. And I get to lay down the law again and redo those goals and go after it. My daily life looks different than it did 6 months ago. And so answering those questions, who am I? What do I want? It's an everyday thing. And it's what helps me stay on track to make sure that I don't end up in a place where I have too many commitments and I'm not making progress towards what really matters.
And it's so easy to have too many commitments, and they all could be important, right? They all could be important. They all could matter to you. They all could have value, or you believe in it. But there's only so much hours in a day. There's only so much of you that you can stretch out as a person. So having to make those choices is important, and a very conscious choice that has to be made.
Absolutely. And I think that that's exactly what you stand for, is those bold, audacious choices that may not be easy to make. It's been, as I've pursued goals, professional goals, I've had to say no to some things I did in my community. I used to be a city councilwoman, and I love that. I love my community. But that was something that, man, when I laid down the law, I had to say no to. And that didn't sit well with a lot of people. A lot of people who had hoped that I would achieve A, B, C, D in their community, that I now had to say, I have to be bold enough to pursue what I feel like is my purpose and go after it. So I would agree that that's not always easy, but it is a choice that we all have the power to make.
We absolutely do. And sometimes those choices make courage. It takes courage to make those choices. And I know you gave a number of wonderful illustrations and stories about moving from one job to the next. And that takes courage. It really does. And it takes boldness, right? To be able to. So I wonder if you sort of talk about how people, and your viewpoint, how people develop that courage or develop that nerve to make those types of choices.
Yeah, so for me, this is the one place that I say I'll get a little woo-woo on you. So if you're listening, just hang with me for a second. I think emotional intelligence is so important. That's a sort of a hot topic in this sort of space today. For me, I sort of have to separate, okay, this is what I'm feeling, but this is how I'm going to act. So whether it was, I think I tell this story in the book about getting my first home loan and ended up talking with the CEO. I was as nervous as could be. I sweated through my clothes. My voice was shaking. I have no doubt that I was Hot Mess Express in front of that bank CEO. But I had to decide right then and there, okay, this is how I feel. I feel nervous, but this is how I'm going to act. I want this deal. I want this rate. I want this house. So I'm going to own up and just take that next right step forward. And I'll say the same thing when it comes to, in the book, I talk about, I think it's 7 different jobs in just a matter of years. And all of those jobs were people who called me, people who said, hey, we had this opportunity. I think you'd be perfect for it. And that happened because all along the way, people saw that I was willing to be bold, to take risk. And so those opportunities continued to come. And for anyone listening to this, when you start making those bold, audacious moves, people will notice that, because not everybody does that. And it could open doors for somebody else too. But there comes, you said you have to be courageous. I agree. But for me, I had to take those emotions and say, we got 2 different things going on here. The way I feel, the way I act. This is the one that I can literally control. I can move that foot. I can move my mouth. I can't really make this nervous sweating go away, or however nerves show up for you. Yep. But I can move and make things happen.
Yep. And the nerves and the sweating, I mean, well, how do they appear for you? I mean, I sweat sometimes too, so I'm with you. Those are a function of just us being human, right?
Absolutely.
In fact, if we're not experiencing that, then maybe we're not doing the right thing. I would question that, but I think that's a function of being human and not living in that space, not letting those things hold you back or hold you down. Really is a key, because we are going to experience them, right, Alyson?
I totally agree. And I think too, when it comes to those nerves and the feelings of anxiousness or whatever might come along with those next big moves you need to make, I think it is to really analyze where exactly that's coming from. Is it because you're more worried about what other people think, or you're more worried that you're inadequate and imposter? You've probably heard that term. Sometimes you just have to, for me, I have to put my feelings into words. And I had that chapter, use those emotions, use them to, they can crush you, or they can help you crush your goals. And I think that when I just say, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is where it comes from, physically write it out, man, I can wad that up and throw it away and say, that's not serving me.
Right. I think it's important that, considering all the work you do in the leadership space, to talk about that, again, and even just on the topic of boldness and how that applies to leaders. Now, I don't think it'll be that much different, but there is some nuances that are, that aren't the exact same from a leadership perspective.
Absolutely. So my heart is for people in the workplace who need to take ownership of their role to make an impact in what they're doing. I can remember when I started out working at Walmart, almost right out of college as an assistant manager, I remember walking the floor with one of my supervisors and saying, I'm supposed to do something bigger than this. Like, the world has something else for me. And he said, I remember he pulled me like to another aisle and just said, hold on, Alyson, look around at all these employees you can make an impact on. And I found that stayed with me, and it carried with me through different jobs. And I began to become someone who used my skills, who used my talents to empower other people. And what you find is that when you start doing that, all of you can achieve so much more. Because I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the most talented, the prettiest. I mean, you name it, I'm not it. But if you can become a leader, someone who empowers other people, then man, I think you can achieve anything, which is where the leadership work comes in. I think that when I talked about, before we started this podcast, I think we talked about, how did you get where you are? And my father-in-law does leadership development training. He's done it for 30 years. And so I met my husband in high school. I didn't start working with his father till 3 years ago. But I found that all through my career, these things were working. And I got to a point where it's like, man, my passion is empowering people to empower others, teaching them how to communicate, how to delegate, all of those things that go on in the day-to-day corporate world in a way that allows people to live out their purpose in your organization. So that's the work that I do. We get really nitty gritty as far as, okay, what exactly do you need to manage? What are your resources and all of those kinds of things? And I can go full on nerd if you want to go there. but that's where my heart is, oddly. Like, I love developing leaders in corporations.
Yeah. No, I absolutely can see it. I can see it to her from day one and now. She loves what she does, which is so important. And I also love the fact that our path is there's an expression I heard, I'm going to mess it up because I always do, but we live our life, when we look back at our lives, it's an art, but when we live it forward, it's a science, right?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So it makes you move forward and you go through all your experiences and you go, oh, okay, that's why I had to do these things. That's where this fits into where I was going. That's why in this moment where, although I really wasn't happy about being there, I did it anyways. And it's what you take from those instances, those experiences that feed into the point where we're at now. So it's almost like I'm where I'm at because this is exactly where I'm supposed to be based on what I've done. And that's what I'm hearing from you.
Absolutely. I've got chills. I wish you could see this, feel this, or hear this. I think that you're so right. And I won't act like there aren't moments or times when you're in the midst of that struggle before you get out of it, that it's not hard and that there's not tears and that there's not frustration and anger and all of those emotions and those days that go by where you may find yourself, or I found myself, where, I mean, you're just in the thick of it. But it is good, and eventually we'll all get to a place, if you take ownership of it, where you get to the other side and say, man, I needed to go through that.
Yeah. I always talk about being on the other side of adversity. That's where the true greatness lies. It really does. And so if you envision this boulder in your path, right? And however you get up, over, around, through, whatever, but you got to get to the other side, because that's where all the good stuff is. And I mean, adversity, as much as we don't have fun with it, we don't enjoy it, we'd rather avoid it. There's so much that can be taken from it, but we just got to get to the other side to see it.
You're exactly right. I just have to hit back on what you said. Your vision is bigger than your path. That's so powerful. If you just stop and can think about that, that's going to go in my list of quotes on my room, my marker board in my room. That's powerful. And anybody listening to this, if you're in the midst of a struggle, I hope that you hear that. And just remember, your vision is bigger than your path. That's awesome.
It is. It totally is. And so so I look at sort of what even fueled me personally, and I look at my personal life and go, yeah, I needed to do this. I needed to get here. I needed to overcome this because I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
I love that. It's incredible. I will say one other thing about that Lay Down the Law podcast, or that Lay Down the Law process that we teach. We answer that question, who am I? What do I want? Now, how do I get there? And we talk about the path not being easy. I think it's important. You said, the vision is bigger than the path. And I think when you're in the thick of it and you're making these strides, when you've backwards mapped of where I want to be, what's the roads I have to take there, when you're using your own map app to get where you want to be, I think that staying focused on that vision is what's going to keep you going. If you're on a diet, staying focused on your why is what's going to keep you going. I mean, whatever the goal is for whoever is listening to this, whatever that audacious goal is, staying focused on your why, your vision, that's what will keep you continually making those next right steps, even when it's hard.
It reminds me, one of my favorite lines from your book was, own the responsibility of making your goal. I read that. I highlighted that. I went back to it again. And it's exactly what this is, right? It's our responsibility. We've got to be accountable. And accountability is a whole other piece. But we got to be accountable to ourselves and make that decision for us, because that is our goal. We own it. We can put it on a vision board, whatever. But it belongs to us. And it's our responsibility.
Yes. I'll say it again. Yes. There's lots of things. When you write a book, I wrote that book, oh gosh, almost 3 years ago. And so there's lots of things probably in that book that I've forgotten about, but that's something that I never will, because it's the catalyst to positive change in your life.
Mm-hmm. What got you to the point, Alyson, that you wanted to write that book? Like, is it something that you had thought about? Was it something that you permeated in your mind about, and then you said, okay, let me put pen and paper? What was that? What did that look like for you?
I was on vacation with my in-laws, very close to them. I was on vacation. I was in the pool with my father-in-law specifically. He plays such an important role in my life personally and of course professionally. I remember being in the pool, just him and I. Everybody else was on the beach or whatever. We were talking, having deep, heartfelt conversation like we always do. And he said, "One day you're going to write a book. I've heard your stories. I've known you I'd probably been hanging around 3 or 4 years then." He said, "One day you're going to write a book." And at that point in my life, reading was like my least favorite thing to do. So I was like, write a book? No, thank you. I'm trying to get out of college early and get away from a book. But, sometimes we have to eat our own words. I've done that as a parent many times. And I began this career where I wanted to develop leaders, and it just became an unquestionable thing where you need a book so that people know what you're about. And I think that I love that I have it in paper. I love that I have it in writing. I felt like I wrote it very plain so nobody could question where I stood on what it takes to be successful. Social media couldn't get in the way with that. Comments couldn't get in the way with a book. So that is why I wrote a book. I didn't think it was something I could ever do. I think that I didn't write a book like many other people wrote a book. I wrote like I talk. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but as if I was having a conversation with you, I poured my heart into that book with the thought that I'm looking at it right now, giving my own self chills with the thought of there are going to be people that reading this. And my hope is not to turn any sort of spotlight on me, but to shine it on you and maybe anyone else who reads this to see that you're capable of achieving whatever it is that your purpose here is on earth.
And you could have gone in any kind of direction with even the title of the book, Leveling Up. It could have. So I wonder if you could sort of touch on why specifically that you went with that title, Level Up.
So Level Up, first of all, it's catchy right now. I mean, it's a song, Level Up, Level Up. I mean, you know it. Everybody knows it. If you haven't heard it here, you've heard it on TikTok. So that was part of it. I mean, I'm a marketing major at heart. Yep. That was part of it. And then the rest of it, my author and my editor came up with, because I played around with titles like Own It. And we heard Owner Shift at one point, but then you have someone else who has a book, Leader Shift, and all of that. So Level Up, Elevate Your Game and Crush Your Goals was 100% a group effort. We talked about empowering other people. It was a group effort. Ultimately, when we say elevate your game is how you live your life. Yeah. And when you take things to the next level, when you take ownership, that's when you start crushing your goals. So it all came together, bam, like that, instantly. Someone mentioned it, and it hit, it stuck.
Well, you did a great job with it. Like I said, Alyson, it was a fun read. And to answer your question, it absolutely was you. I felt as I read, I heard you like I'm hearing you right now. So your authenticity came through loud and clear.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad.
Amazing. Well, I also want to say I appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me today. It's been phenomenal. I think the messages that we've shared are very much in line with everything that you individually talk about in your leadership world, and very much as well with myself. So I want to thank you for that. This has been awesome. Where can our listeners learn more about you, or where can we find them if they wanted to even grab a copy of your book, Alyson?
Sure. If you want a copy of Level Up, you can get it on Amazon. Type in Level Up Alyson Van Hooser. Or if you want to check out my website, vanhooser.com.
Amazing. Thank you for doing this, Alyson. This is so
Thank you so much.
I was looking forward to this for a long time, so I'm glad we did it, and glad we're here to chat, and glad we connect this way.
Yes, absolutely. Stay in touch. Thank you, Audley.
You will. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Back we are here on the podcast, and first off, got to send a big thanks to Alyson for being here. It was so much appreciated. I think your energy and enthusiasm are fantastic, and like I said, you did a great job with the book. It's entitled Level Up, Elevate Your Game and Crush Your Goals. Be sure to snag yourself a copy. You definitely won't regret it of that, I assure you. You know, when I reflect on my conversation with Alyson and the personal story, the thing that stands out most in my mind about what leveling up is this. It doesn't matter what kind of slow start you had in life, what mistakes you've made previously, or even who's ahead of you. Those things don't matter. The only thing that you should be focused on is what steps do you need to take in order to take ownership of what happens next. That's how you level up. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, you certainly can do so by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. Enter your email address and you'll be immediately alerted every time new content comes out. And it's as easy as that. We reached the end of the episode, so of course I've got to thank you, our listeners, for your ongoing tremendous support. It's always appreciated and nothing but love for you. Thank you for the appreciation, the kind notes, the gestures, the likes, the shares, all of that good stuff. It's so much appreciated. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.